But first this morning, we're talking about a really big update for the thousands of people living in properties with dangerous, flammable cladding. In a matter of weeks, new rules will finally force developers to face up to the problem that's been going on for years. Now, Matt, what's the latest?
Of course, this goes back to the tragedy at Grenfell. And, you know, we worked out very quickly, by 2017, in fact, that the combustible materials that were out on the outside of Grenfell were actually on the outside of so many other buildings in our country. It was a real shock realisation for people. And I think, the Building Safety Act, which came in last year, June of last year, really enforces what most of us instinctively know, that the fault doesn't lie with the leaseholders, the people who've bought these flats innocently, without knowing the way that they were built or the materials used. It actually really lies with the developers, with the building owners, with other people. And the Act is there to try and make sure that no burden is on the leaseholders, that they don't pay any more towards it, and anything that they have paid is reimbursed. And that's the way that it should be working. Now, there are huge caveats and exemptions with all of this. For a start, we're looking at buildings over 5 stories, that's 11 metres plus. Only those are covered currently. And also, it's only in England. Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales will have to make other arrangements to try and get them sorted out. The real problem has been that despite this Act coming in last summer, the developers have been very slow to act, to reimburse people to get this work done. So now we've got this new deadline, which expires in March, by which time developers have to sign up to start getting this work sorted.
Now, for the owners of the flats that have got this cladding issue, Matt, how's the whole thing going to work? OK,
so there is this deadline, 13th of March, by which time they have to sign up. After that, they have to let leaseholders know how the remediation, as they call it, fixing these buildings is going to work. They have to show that action's going to be taken, and hopefully this will speed up the process of getting it done. The stick, if you like, the punishment that's on the end of this, if they don't, is that they will be excluded from the housing market. So when planning comes up, that's going to be the process where they say, I'm sorry, you haven't signed up to this pledge. You can't play here. You can't make money in the way that you have previously. So they'll be frozen out of the market. The detail here is what's important, because it's fine to say these things. What we need to see is how they're going to work in practice. Developers aren't known for handing money back. That's not what they do typically. You'll know that, Sarah. So really, it's how it's going to be enforced. Who's going to be there to make sure that they're playing by the rules, that they're not switching company names, that they're not dissolving and doing all the things you can do within company law to escape their responsibility. So this is the beginning of the process, but the way it's going to play out over the next months or years is the important thing, to make sure that what's written in this Act turns into genuine practical help for people who've been forced to pay and whose properties are, in some cases, worth absolutely nothing. It's a tragedy. It really is.
Yeah. It's a tragedy.
Yeah. A lot of people took matters into their own hands, didn't they? They tried fixing the cladding themselves. They would have paid good money for that. Will they get their cash back?
That's the way it should work. If you have paid for the cost of cladding, then cladding repairs, if it's to be taken, if that's been passed on to you, you should receive that back from your developer. And that's going 30 years into the past, 15 years into the future, from the 28th of June 2022. That's our point that we're working from. If they're not paying, again, that's when we're going to have to see how this mechanism works. Is there going to be a phone line where you can call and say, you need to force my developer to do this because they're not playing ball? Practically, the enforcement is the way it's going to work. There's also the other measures that have been put in place, what were called waking watches, where they had patrols looking at the buildings overnight to make sure that they weren't at risk. Those have been tremendously expensive.
So expensive.
Those costs have been passed on to leaseholders again. There are measures in place to get them reimbursed. They are different for different circumstances, but they're there, and there's a cap to how much leaseholders should have had to pay for that. So that's another side to it. It's not just about the cladding, it's the other measures that were there to make sure people were living in relative safety.
Now, for me, Matt, the kind of million-dollar question is, all those homeowners who've been living in this kind of limbo, right? What does that mean? They're now going to be able to sell their properties? Are they in a better place to do all that?
You know, this is the other side of it, that people just haven't been able to move on with their lives because they're not able to sell properties which they may have outgrown. Families get bigger, people need to move on with their lives, but these properties, you haven't been able to sell them because the value has effectively been zero. Now, 6 big mortgage lenders, the big 6, have said they will start to offer mortgages on properties which have cladding as long as they have this promise from developers that the work will be completed at some point in the future. The detail, we don't know. Will these mortgages be on the same basis as other equivalent properties? We don't know. We wait to see. But this is progress. We are seeing hope for people that haven't had hope for an awful long time. And the end goal is that they have properties that are worth what they've put into them, and they really have got a safe place to live and a safe place to sell. That's the goal we need to aim for.
You're absolutely right. Hopefully this is a lifeline, because people have literally been stuck, haven't they? Thanks, Matt. A lot to get through there.